RetroDaze.
I don't know about you, but when I was younger, creativity flowed through me like blood. Imagination was abundant and gave me life. Every little thing I did seemed steeped in both creativity and imagination. And I'm sure it wasn't just me, because all my friends were in the same classes and working on the same artistic projects. We all watched the same movies and television shows, we all read the same books and comics, and we all created games, stories, and art.
It's a time of life I think about often, even as I stand here making a video, because for me at least, that drive to create never went away, and I have those early transformative experiences to thank. When you're a kid, it's okay to be creative. You're not old enough for your parents to start worrying over your potential life goals and career. They aren't fretting over your financial situation or worrying over how you'll ever make it as an artist, musician, dancer, actor, writer, or any other number of artistic professions. Because if we show too much interest in the arts for too long, at some point, well, for some of us anyway, our parents started talking about starving artists and asking pointed questions about how you expect to support yourself as an artist. No, whether we like to admit it or not, the arts, creativity, and imagination all begin to carry something of a stigma the further into adulthood we get. And while not everyone experiences the scenario I've laid out, I'm willing to bet that more than a few aspiring artists, actors, writers, and musicians chose to put away childish things, so to speak. But we're not here to dwell on the choices we made as adults, rather to enjoy the memories of our creative childhood selves.
You like to draw or paint, or maybe just sketch or doodle? Well, if you do, chances are you have the interest needed to become a serious art student. And here's how you can find out. By simply calling toll-free, Art Instruction Schools will send you without cost or obligation this enjoyable art test. You take it at home, in your spare time, and when you've finished, you simply mail it in. Your test is then reviewed and graded by experts, and that's all there is to it. So call or write today for your art test. And don't let the wonderful world of art pass you by. To get your free art test, call this toll-free number or write to Art Test and give your name, address, and age. Don't delay. Call this number now.
Art Instruction Schools was a type of home study course for training in art, and specifically cartooning and illustration. Though most of us here will only remember it for the previous commercial and the frenzy of creative yearning it stoked within us, the correspondence course was actually founded as the Federal School of Applied Cartooning in 1914. The first iteration of the school was a branch of the Bureau of Engraving and created to help train illustrators for not only the printing industry, but the Bureau itself. The allure of Art Instruction Schools, Inc. circulated around those magnificent Draw Me talent tests, and I suspect there were at least two major reasons for this. First of all, there was the anticipation of free mail. Yeah, I know, that may sound ridiculous on the face of it, but we've talked about the magic mailbox before on this channel, and how as kids, waiting for a parcel was akin to Christmas Eve all year long. While a talent test probably wasn't the tippy top of our mail-away hopes and dreams, it was still something to look forward to. The second and more potent reason was the notion that we could become bona fide artists. I suspect none of us were thinking too deeply about the whole school aspect and rather just wanted to prove ourselves with a talent test. Of course, for those lucky few who actually passed the test, you'd find out soon enough what followed felt almost like a scam. A representative would either call or actually show up at your house to talk about the program and look over more of your artwork. Then they'd offer admission for somewhere between $2,500 to $3,000. This is where most parents would politely ask the rep to leave. Though there were inevitably some parents who took advantage of what turned out to be a real program for an associate's degree in fine art. Students of the program received project binders, textbooks, and materials. They'd then complete assignments which they sent to the school for grading by professional artists and receive feedback on how to improve. In fact, according to Wikipedia, one of the instructors was even Charles Schulz. When Schulz was in high school, his mother saw an ad for the Art Instruction Inc. talent test that asked, "Do you like to draw?" Schulz took the $170 course, a huge sum during the Depression, while his father labored to make the payments. After World War II, Schultz worked on Catholic comic magazines and then signed on as an instructor with Art Instruction, Inc. He was still employed there when he began sketching the characters that later were developed into Peanuts. I'd wager that for most of us, our memories begin and end with the commercial and perhaps receiving the Draw Me talent test in the mail.
First, I didn't like my sister, but she grew nice. I want to be a teenager and go to beach parties, and she means liberty to everyone who sees her.
The child who creates is a child who develops. Encourage them to color with Crayola crayons and markers. To imagine, create, and grow. Crayola, every child's camera of life.
If we weren't enrolled in an advanced art correspondence course, then we were likely futzing around with crayons and construction paper, and I mean that in the best possible way. I can't tell you how much I looked forward to a fresh box of Crayola crayons with a little sharpener embedded right into the cardboard. Now that was some epic stuff for a kindergartner. Weirdly, the only thing that could beat a fresh box of crayons was the insanely huge bucket of crayons and markers teachers would sometimes trot out during craft time. All the kids would run to the bucket and plunge their hands in like it was filled with gold bullion. And for some reason, we never drew on sketch paper, instead opting for multicolored reams of construction paper. This was also around the time that we would be gifted our first watercolor paint set. You know the ones, a row or two of recessed circles or ovals filled with different colored paint in a flimsy white plastic holder. They always came with at least one paintbrush in its own little recessed holder area in the same plastic. You'd wet the tip of the brush and then swirl it around in the preferred color until it saturated the bristles. I preferred to paint my own creations, but you could also use these kits with activity books. You could even skip the paint altogether and get a paint with water or water reveal book, which were a special kind of magic all their own. If it were near the holidays, well, you better believe our questionable artistic talents were put to work on various ornaments and decorations. The most enduring of these types of crafts in my own vault of memories were the crumpled tissue paper decorations. The teachers would give you a piece of cardstock cut into the shape of a wreath, dreidel, Santa, angel, or something similar, and then we'd get to work crumpling little squares of colored tissue paper into balls that we'd then glue to that cutout. I'm sure most of us lamented the loss of these arts and crafts projects once we aged up and graduated into real school, but for some of us, the desire to continue creating didn't die with the loss of crayons and construction paper.
Circles, whirls, and curlicues, and clouds of color we...
Spirograph, the miracle drawing set that lets you make a million marvelous designs, now introduces Super Spirograph. Bigger, more exciting, with a new assortment of snap-together pieces that let you make bigger, more fantastic designs than ever before.
Dream designs, they can be mine.
With new Super Spirograph.
The Spirograph, a drawing toy that creates geometric patterns, was invented by Dennis Fisher in the early 1960s. Even though drawing toys based on gears existed before, Fisher's Spirograph became internationally famous after being licensed by Kenner Products in 1966. Although there's a mathematical basis to the drawings and how they're created, I never cared much. It was just enthralling to move a colored pencil around with the gears and end up creating wonderfully symmetric designs and patterns. These kinds of paint-by-numbers creative outlets were always a lot of fun, even if they constrained your art to a certain extent. There's of course some creativity to the toy. Choosing different colors and gears will inherently result in different designs, but after a while the gimmick may wear thin, as it did with Twirl Paint.
Your painting starts with Ohio Art's Twirl Paint. When you spin a pattern and watch it grow, it goes forwards or backwards. Twirl Paint comes with 4 water paints and a supply of art cards, batteries not included. Twirl Paint.
There were other versions of this toy over the years, the most memorable for me being Nickelodeon's Easy Squeezy Mix and Spin, but no matter which version you had, it was a gloopy, painty good time. If we wanted a little bit more freedom in our artistic creations, there were always other choices in the toy department. The Etch A Sketch was invented in the late 1950s by André Cassagna, a French electrician. As the story goes, while working on a factory light switch plate, he became transfixed by the phenomenon of aluminum powder clinging to a decal. According to museumofplay.org, André Cassagna applied his experience with the clinging properties of an electrostatic charge to invent a mechanical drawing toy with no spare parts. He called his creation l'écran magique, the magic screen. Although many manufacturers passed on the device at the International Toy Fair in Nuremberg, Germany in 1959, the Ohio Art Company eventually reconsidered and ended up investing $25,000, which was more than they had ever paid for a license, and renaming the toy Etch A Sketch. After a highly effective advertising campaign, the Etch A Sketch became a must-have Christmas toy for 1960 and has become a mainstay of toy shelves everywhere. While at first glance, Etch A Sketch may appear to have just as many constraints to creativity as the Spirograph or Twirl Paint, I find the limitations have always spurred fresh ideas and encouraged critical thinking skills. After all, if you wanted to draw a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, you had to figure out how to achieve the effect using the two knobs and lines of aluminum powder. In effect, it was kind of like placing a pencil down on a piece of paper and then being told to draw something without being allowed to lift the pencil off the paper. In practice, this meant you had to plan your movements and think ahead, which was a challenge, but certainly far from impossible. Famously, the Mona Lisa was reproduced using an Etch A Sketch. The resulting linographic images were often quite enchanting, and in fact, Pablo Picasso used the linography style to create over 50 drawings, mostly animals, in his later career. Though I remember getting frustrated with my own Etch A Sketch at times, and more often than not ended up chaotically scrambling the line around the screen to create a messy web work, there was always the neat trick of shaking the device to clear your drawing and make way for a new one.
There were, and still are, ample options on store shelves for kids looking to stretch their creative legs on long walks through abstract landscapes of the mind. And though many of us may have eventually felt stifled as we grew older, I like to believe that our inherent creativity is still there just below the surface of workdays, bills, and household chores. Now maybe you feel that itch just below the surface every now and then, that desire to create. And to you, I say this: scratch that itch. Free your creative self, even if it's just for a little while. You might be surprised at all the things they have to tell you after being locked away for so long. And if you've always allowed your creative self free reign, well, even better. Now before we go, let's try something a little different today. Tell me about your own creative endeavors. What new creations have you been working on as of late? What projects do you have planned? You know, I'd love to hear about it down in the comments. And if you enjoy our content, please consider liking this video, subscribing to the channel, and maybe even activating that ubiquitous notification bell, because it really does make a huge difference. Let's meet again next week to celebrate yesteryear, right here on RetroDaze.
Clicky clicky.